Hello there and welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Ignace Chalks. I rank, review, and react to all types of movie media, and today we have Christopher Nolan's newest film, Oppenheimer. And just to preface, SAG-AFTRA has released statements saying that we can still talk about these movies, which means I can still do what I love, and that means making these videos. But if you want to donate or help out in any way, check the link in the bio. Everything will be right there for you. Oppenheimer, rated R, came out this year. History drama, 3-hour runtime, which honestly, I wouldn't even be mad if this movie went on a little bit more. 93% critic score and a 91% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Christopher Nolan's newest film, being a 3-hour rated R biopic about the man behind the atomic bomb, turned out not only to be grand and bold in every sense of the word, but also surprisingly human, thrilling, and intimate. Now, obviously, the elephant in the room talking about either movie is, of course, the meme of Barbenheimer. But honestly, all jokes aside, these two movies have a lot more in common than you would initially think. Now, of course, I am going to be talking about Barbie as well. I have watched that movie 3 times, as well as watching Oppenheimer 3 times. But walking out of Barbie, I felt a new sense of hope and glee for humanity, whereas walking out of Oppenheimer, I was left with a sense of dread and sadness for what these events did to humanity. However, when I think about who Oppenheimer was and the light that he's painted in this film, I see him as simply human. A man that went far and beyond for all the wrong reasons, and when it all dawned on him and when he was faced with the consequences of his actions, we are there for that entire journey. And we're left with that dreadful feeling. We're left feeling everything that Oppenheimer did, and that final scene puts everything into perspective incredibly well. Cillian Murphy plays Oppenheimer like a tortured genius that has ghosts following him everywhere he goes. And this is established in the opening shot, which is eventually directly called back to in the final scene, which means that we are shown almost immediately that Oppenheimer's mind had him doomed to fail from the beginning. Being immersed in what feels like a 3-hour anxiety attack happening in his head and cutting to particles splitting and the nukes exploding every couple of minutes was enough to exhaust anybody watching this film. And when I say exhaust, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, leaving this theater, I was mentally drained as to what I just saw, but in the best way possible. It leaves you with a dreadful feeling that sticks with you for a very long time. And I always say, I want to feel something while watching a movie. If I walk out not feeling anything, that means it did not do a great job. But whether that means leaving feeling incredibly happy and hopeful, where Barbie left me, or feeling incredibly dreadful and just feeling really heavy like Oppenheimer left me, I am happy either way. That means the movie did an amazing job. I bring this up because while 3 hours can be looked at as way too long for a film like this, I think it's very much needed to fully encapsulate every jarring moment that not only affects Oppenheimer, but affects everyone around him. And I think that's where Nolan is at his very best in this movie. Now, there's tons of sequences that I see everyone go on and on about, and I will too. But that means I'd have to make 3 separate videos about every sequence in here. And of course, I don't mind doing that, but I feel like just with everything going on right now, all the movies I have to catch up with, I'm not going to do that. But for moments like the Trinity sequence, to everybody's outstanding performance, Nolan being able to put all of that into words and court drama and get that point fully across is what manages to sweep me off of my feet every single time. And sure, court dramas and men talking in a room is not everyone's cup of tea, but coming from someone that thinks Better Call Saul is one of the greatest TV shows of all time, I was sitting there eating up every single moment in the second half of that movie. And I think the best split I was able to find was immediately after the Trinity sequence, where we find out that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed. And I gotta say something about this, because I was kind of looking forward to that being explained a little more. Obviously, I don't need to see those sequences happen like the Trinity sequence, but I was looking forward to see that explained a little bit more. But coming out of the movie, having that not really be explained, and having everything with Jean Tatlock's character not be explained, her death kind of being brushed over, I thought about this a little bit more, and I think I have a perspective on this. And if you have a different one, please feel free to leave it in the comments. But I think passing over Hiroshima and Nagasaki and passing over Florence Pugh's character's death, I feel like that's Oppenheimer kind of brushing over those important moments. I think living in the moment of that Trinity sequence, his greatest accomplishment at the time, what he thought was such an amazing accomplishment, to the point where he's basking in all his glory and he is being celebrated. Focusing on those moments, focusing on him looking at himself as in the right, but brushing over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, brushing over everything with Florence Pugh's character, I feel like that's Oppenheimer trying to tell his part of the story. The only time we see those other moments covered is in those black and white scenes. And of course, Nolan said that the colored scenes were going to be subjective and the black and white scenes were going to be objective. So I think that's Nolan saying that this is how Oppenheimer would like to be remembered. This is Oppenheimer saying that I know what I did was bad. Here's how I felt in this moment. Here's me dealing with the consequences, but brushing over some moments that are very important. And that makes my experience of the film a lot better when I look at it in that light. But I understand that could be interpreted a lot of different ways, so I'm open to hearing what everyone else thought about that. But coming out of that Trinity sequence and seeing that all of these events had already happened, we are full throttle into the end game. And this is highlighted with what is possibly the most unsettling scene in any film this year, and that's Oppenheimer's speech being edited almost the exact same way as the Trinity sequence. And since watching this film we've been removed from this for 3 weeks, Christopher Nolan has come out and said that that was intentional. And this is something that I was so happy about. I think that scene is horrifying. It is so unsettling, but I love it for that reason. Because in this speech, Oppenheimer is basking in everything that he has done. He's saying his only regret is that he couldn't do this to the Nazis and that it had to be Japan. He is eating up every moment. He's eating up everything. He has this crowd eating out of his hand. But Nolan kind of takes us out of this moment and he edits it that way to show that Oppenheimer is not right and his ego is getting far too big for his own good. After this, we're back to the Social Network-esque storytelling, which I gotta say I love a lot. But this time, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Louis Strauss, is getting his time to shine, playing the selfish and maniacal counterpart to Oppenheimer. And for this last hour and a half, we get Nolan in his bag because we get different perspectives and scenes played out from the POV of two men with gigantic egos, and it ends in two very dramatic conclusions for both. And I have to address that a big chunk of this movie is focused on the race to build the atomic bomb. And for some, that first half doesn't hit as good as that second half or vice versa. But for me, it flowed perfectly. And this is in part due to the amazing performances that we not only get from Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr., but every supporting actor in this film. I was in awe with how Nolan was able to give everyone their moments, such as Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Ben Safdie, Gary Oldman, Josh Hartnett in the first half of this film, but also in the second half, Alden Ehrenreich, Jason Clarke, Rami Malek, and Tom Conti. And if that sounded like I basically just named off the entire cast, it's because the entire cast did amazing. They all had their moments to shine, and that's something that still manages to blow my mind. Because if y'all remember Amsterdam of last year, it was also a biopic that had an insanely stacked cast, but David O. Russell was not able to flesh out those characters anywhere near as great as Christopher Nolan was able to do in this film. And that's something I keep thinking back on and I keep getting impressed with. It's just so rare to see that nowadays, and I'm so glad that everyone had their time to shine because this is a wildly stacked cast. And even though some actors like Josh Peck and Jack Quaid aren't fleshed out a ton, it's not like they needed to be, but like the people that Christopher Nolan chose to give those moments to come through and deliver so well. Like I constantly think back to Alden Ehrenreich and Rami Malek in the second half of this movie, and I can't help but smile because they did amazing. I truly believe that this is one of, if not the best Nolan film, and I'm just so happy that I'm gonna be able to tell my kids that I was part of Barbenheimer. And while this was memed out of control, the fact that these two movies delivered so well and they both had a different perspective on humanity and events that could affect humanity, I think it's just beautiful. I'm so happy that Barbie crossed $1 billion. I'm so happy that this movie crossed over 500 million. Both deserve it so well. I mean, again, it still boggles my mind that a 3-hour rated R biopic about the man that created the atomic bomb was able to generate this much hype. And granted, I know a lot of that is owed to Barbie, but still, like, think about that weekend. Think about that opening weekend and what these films have still been able to do even August 7th. I'm just so happy I was able to be a part of this. Both movies I have not been able to start thinking about. Both I have watched 3 times already, and every time I do, I feel like they both get better and better. And that's why I have to give Oppenheimer a 96 out of 100. And it falls as my second favorite movie of the year. Believe the hype, this movie was great. I had an absolute blast watching this in IMAX. I had such a great time just being thrown into this story and just feeling the dread and feeling the exhaustion of Oppenheimer and the mind that he had. And I'm just really excited to see this Oscar race. I really hope Best Supporting Actor comes down to Robert Downey Jr., and Ryan Gosling. It will be such a sight to see. But please let me know what you thought about Oppenheimer. Let me know how you interpreted some of these sequences, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And without further ado, that's my review. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.